Hello everyone, and it is time for the Victober 2020 announcement video. I thought it would be fitting to show you a little corner, a little nook of the Ebenezer Maxwell Mansion where I host a book club, although in 2020 we've been doing more virtually. But I had their blessing to film a couple videos here, and I thought I would take up the opportunity because what better time to film here than to announce Victober, which is so exciting. I cannot wait to tell you about all of the challenges and everything we have in store for this 5th Victober. Victober, in case this is your first time hearing about it, is a month-long celebration throughout the month of October. Just celebrating all things Victorian literature, whether it's novels, poetry, short stories, nonfiction, so diaries and letters, all of the above plays are things that count as Victorian literature if they are published in England or Scotland, Ireland, or Wales during the years 1837 through to 1901, which was the reign of Queen Victoria. We hope that you'll join us. There are just so many wonderful challenges we have for you, including one selected by all of you. And we think it's going to be just a lovely, lovely year. Now, I realized I am sort of out of sorts with organizing my thoughts, and I neglected to say who the other hosts of Victober are. So it is Katie from Books and Things and Lucy from Lucy the Reader. Ange is not really making videos now. She's hosted every previous Victober, but she will be kind of hanging out on social media, looking at the posts, and maybe you can see she might read a Victorian novel or two. So we will miss her as one of the booktube hosts, but hopefully next time she will be hosting with us again. The first challenge is Katie's challenge, and I should say that the challenges are, of course, optional. If you read one Victorian piece of literature, whether it's a letter, a short story, a novel, a poem, a play, then that counts as participating in Victober. But for those of you, and I know there are many people who are returning Victoberists, you enjoy the challenges. So I will just tell you what the challenges are and look forward to seeing what everyone picks for them. The very first challenge is selected by Katie, and that is to read a Victorian book that equates to your favorite modern genre, which I think is a lovely challenge because I think some people think of Victorian literature as daunting and maybe out of touch and kind of always in parlors with, sipping tea, but it is not always that. So look to Katie's video that she's going to give you recommendations for that challenge, and I think you'll find something in there for everyone. Then moving on to Lucy's challenge, which I love, it is read a Victorian diary or collection of letters. So she's going to have some great recommendations for you there, and I have kind of a couple books I already had in mind for this. So I'm really pleased that this is Lucy's challenge because I have several books. It will be hard to choose between them. Then moving on to my challenge, which is read a new to you book and/or short story by a favorite Victorian author. So I did include, for those of you who maybe have a favorite Victorian author, but you're still making your way through their major novels, you could read one of those. But if you have kind of done all of their major novels, there's probably a short story here and there that you haven't read by them. And most Victorian authors started out writing short stories. Short story was a really easy form to publish in Victorian newspapers, and I think you'll find that there are you'll be surprised at the amount of short stories that your favorite author has written. Now, for the lesser known novels, the short stories I'm really going to be branching into because I just haven't read that many. But for the novels that you might not have read, I did want to give one recommendation for each Victorian author. So the first author is Thomas Hardy, and Thomas Hardy, I know Return of the Native is fairly well known, but I feel like Far from the Madding Crowd and Tess of the D'Urbervilles gets talked about more. So I want to recommend Return of the Native. It is my absolute favorite Thomas Hardy novel to date, but I have more of his catalog to get through. Then for Elizabeth Gaskell, I want to recommend Mary Barton. I think Wives and Daughters, which I don't stop talking about, and North and South, which I hear spoken about a lot on BookTube, are focused on more, and Mary Barton not as much. But I think Mary Barton is a really exciting Victorian novel to read. It's very pacey. It has, the industrial setting, but it's also got some mystery and intrigue to it, some romance, and just some really compelling characters. And I think it's a really kind of pulpy Victorian novel. So if you want something really that's going to hold your attention easily, I think Mary Barton is a good bet. And then we move on to George Eliot. And I want to recommend, I love this book, Adam Bede. And this to me is not talked about as much as Middlemarch, I think, is maybe George Eliot's that is talked about the most next to Silas Marner. But I think that Adam Bede has so much to offer. And it's also very fascinating for those of you maybe in high school that had to read The Scarlet Letter, because Adam Bede is George Eliot's retelling of The Scarlet Letter. So I think you'll find it very interesting. The things that she does keep the same that happened in The Scarlet Letter, but the things that she changes and tweaks and kind of how she's commenting on society. But I think it's very worth your while. And if George Eliot is an author that has intimidated you, then I think maybe Adam Bede would be a good place to start. And then lastly, I would like to talk about Charles Dickens. So for those of you who watch Katie from Books and Things, which if you're watching this video, I think it's 100% of you know Katie, but she has done so many videos on Charles Dickens, just lovely, lovely videos. And she was the one who encouraged me to read Dombey and Son. And I would not have read it so early into my, BookTube time had she not really spoken so highly of Dombey and Son. And I am so happy that I did. It's one of my absolute favorite Dickens novels. There's some really fascinating female characters in there, and he's just very sophisticated. You can tell in the way he's pieced together the plot. There's some naval elements, so I think that's nice variety as opposed to maybe just many of his books are set in London and that's where they stay, but there are some naval elements to this one, which I think is neat, and some really wonderful, wonderful side characters, as Dickens always has. So those are my kind of maybe lesser known Victorian novels, even though on BookTube, maybe we hear about these more, but I hope that you are able to find something wonderful. I think I'll be branching out and reading several short stories. One, I know I want to read an Elizabeth Gaskell short story, and I know I want to read a George Eliot short story. So I will be investigating those, and I'm really looking forward to reading some more of their works, because I think sometimes we can get very sad that we have run out of major works by the authors, but we forget that short stories are a really, really wonderful format sometimes. So then we move on to the Reader's Challenge. This was very fun. One of you actually suggested, you sent me a message and you said, what if readers came up with a Victober challenge? So we put it out to you in polls and on Instagram and took your suggestions. And we thought the one that would really suit people the best is to read a Victorian book from a previous Victober TBR that you never got to, or one that you've been meaning to read for ages. So I know personally, and I think many of us get very excited about Victober, and so we put more books than it's probably possible for us to achieve reading in a Victober. And then we have these kind of recycled books that maybe we don't use the next year, but we still wanted to read it. And so we want to give this challenge as an opportunity to you to read the book that maybe just stayed on the unread shelf from a previous Victober TBR. And for myself, I've made a Goodreads shelf for each Victober TBR. And so I've looked back on those, and it's been fun seeing, oh, I didn't read that, and I meant to read that. And for those of you that this is your first Victober, welcome. And we want to invite you to read a Victorian novel you've been meaning to read for ages. So we think that's a good challenge to not give you some kind of independence in your TBR creating. If you do want to do all of the challenges, that's something that leaves it a little bit more open-ended. And then there is a general challenge we're doing, and I am wearing it. So our challenge is to read a Victorian book while wearing something Victorian-esque. So we leave this up to your interpretation. For those of you that know about cosplay, if you've seen pictures, it's very loose, the interpretation. So we don't want you to spend, tons of money on things. Just things that make you think a little bit about the Victorian era will be just fine. And we would love for you to share it on social media. So Instagram, Twitter, and if you have a BookTube channel, you could show it on your BookTube channel. Just any way that you can share it. We would love to see the ways that you have interpreted this challenge. It will be really fun to see the creativity. And then we have a group read along. We put out a poll on Goodreads, and then I think on Twitter, it was on Katie from Books and Things, her Twitter. And we are going to be reading Shirley by Charlotte Bronte. And we're going to be reading it over the whole month. It's just over one chapter a day. And we are going to have a schedule confirmed and put up on the Victober Goodreads group later on. So I will link the Goodreads group and you'll see the schedule eventually if you would like to follow the schedule. I read Shirley the first time a couple of years ago, and I had a somewhat mixed reaction to it. I wasn't quite sure what I thought of it, and I had been thinking anyway about rereading it and giving it another try. So I'm really pleased that this is what was picked as the group read. Now, I realized I follow the hashtag Victober, and some people have started putting up each year like what year it is. So hashtag Victober 2020, I'm sure will become one, and you can see all of the interesting TBR choices and cool Victorian things people are wearing. And I'm going to be posting a fair number of Victober videos. I have some fun surprises planned. I'm also hoping, I don't know, it depends on my living situation because I am in the midst of a move, but I would love to have some Victober socials on Zoom. So more on that later. And I think that's all I have to say. I cannot wait for this 5th Victober. My excitement gets even more each year, just when I think it isn't possible to be more excited about Victober. So thank you for watching, and I look forward to Victobering with all of you. Bye.